In 2002, Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus impressed gamers with its stealth-based platforming, cast of colorful characters, and humorous writing. Despite being a new IP in a sea of gaming mascots, Sly managed to stand out thanks to the creative minds at Sucker Punch Games, spawning a series that fans still adore nearly 20 years later. The gameplay and structure in Sly's first outing are quite different from its sequels, but that doesn't stop it from producing quality episodes that compare to any of the other titles in the Sly franchise. In this video, we will take a look at all 5 of these original episodes to see how they hold up, and ultimately figure out which is best. Welcome to every Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus episode ranked. An aspect of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus that has always impressed me is how remarkably consistent every episode is in terms of quality. Each world manages to bring to life a uniquely stylized aesthetic that perfectly matches the traits and personality of its particular member of the Fiendish Five. Every level provides an exciting terrain for Sly to platform through that is wonderfully tailored to his sneaking abilities. The music is atmospheric and fits the theme each episode is based on. And all 5 episodes add to the lore and overall mystique of the Cooper clan in a way that makes you want to keep learning more about Sly's family history. No one episode truly stands out above the rest, with minor details being what separates one world's ranking from the next. In the case of Sly's 4th episode, Fire in the Sky, a few small issues drop it into last place on this list, but it's worth mentioning that none of these problems are egregious or shameful. That being said, the biggest issue I have with Fire in the Sky is its reliance on gimmicks seen in previous worlds. While this fact doesn't take away from the level's fun, it's just a little disappointing to see so many reused concepts in a game that only takes a few hours to complete. A Desperate Race, Rapid Fire Assault, The King of the Hill, and Duel by the Dragon all borrow gimmicks from the previous 3 worlds with no major changes or new twists to the concepts. Excluding the final level, which is just a showdown with the Panda King, that means that half of Fire in the Sky is rehashed levels. Although I may not be the biggest fan of Miss Ruby's chicken whacking mission or Sir Raleigh's submarine mission, I appreciated that they tried something different at the very least. And to make matters worse, 3 of the 4 missions mentioned earlier lack the collectible clue bottles found in most levels, which means no new move to learn and no new page of the Thievius Raccoonus to find. However, while this is certainly a bit of a letdown, the episode's remaining stages help to balance it out by providing some of the most fun platforming found in the game. A Perilous Ascent is my choice for the best starting level of any episode in Sly 1 for standout moments like dodging falling icicles on a dangerous cliffside and watching a village get buried with a firework-induced avalanche. Similarly, the Unseen Foe has some of my favorite platforming set pieces in the game because of how perfectly designed around Sly's new invisibility technique it is. And though I hate these 2 well-hidden clues for always stumping me, the Flaming Temple of Flame level is one of my favorites in Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus for its ambitious size and scope. Unfortunately, despite how beautifully the snow-capped mountainous terrain of China lent itself to Sly's platforming, these excellent levels ultimately don't stack up favorably to other worlds in the game. Even with cool features like an unlockable special cutscene that you can watch after you've beaten the game, Fire in the Sky feels like it could have been a lot more than what it was. It's part of why I feel they revisited this locale in Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves, because there was so much potential that didn't get tapped into here. With that said, Sly Cooper's 4th episode still has a lot to love, from its goofy ape guards to its enchanting snowy atmosphere to its firework-focused aesthetic. With a few more unique concepts, Fire in the Sky could have easily ranked higher, but due to its few shortcomings, it stands as the least impressive of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus' episodes. What makes the platforming in Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus so engaging is its ability to utilize interesting terrains in organically satisfying ways. It's the same principle that makes games like Chibi Robo or any of the Assassin's Creed games so popular, because using your environment in creative ways to reach your goal is endlessly fun. With that in mind, it's no surprise that the many vines, branches, and logs littered throughout the poisonous swamps that make up a majority of Vicious Voodoo's levels is easily my favorite setting in Sly 1. They lend themselves so well to the type of quick getaway stealth that makes Sly such a thrilling experience, while allowing you to get more deeply immersed in the level's strong atmosphere. It's always been the most memorable aspect of Vicious Voodoo because it is also undeniably the world's biggest strength. This is a result of each level leaning heavily into the tropes surrounding voodoo and the paranormal. You have a mission where Sly must kill 50 chickens to help make a big pot of gumbo, a level where you must escape a large monstrous beast, and multiple jobs revolving around battling ghosts and the undead. This is all complemented by a consistently eerie soundtrack that contributes to the uneasy, unwelcome atmosphere already present in Hades' many swamps. Sadly, in spite of a tremendous theme and design, aesthetic alone is not enough to push Episode 3 to the top of what Sly 1 has to offer. Tragically, Vicious Voodoo's desire to push gameplay outside the box is what prevents Episode 3 from reaching greater heights. While I appreciate the attempt to do something different, I largely find myself wishing I was in a traditional platforming level whenever I'm not. Much like we discussed in Fire in the Sky, I'm mainly disappointed in the lack of clue bottles and Thievius Raccoonus pages in these levels because they feel so integral to the experience of Sly Cooper. However, both Piranha Lake and Down Home Cooking have some flaws, namely janky controls and unnecessary time limits, that can make them frustrating to play. In some ways, these levels actually feel tacked on, despite being extremely appropriate in the context of the episode's theme. Which brings me to the fight with Miss Ruby, which I have always felt was out of character for Vicious Voodoo. I get that for a lot of people this is one of the most unforgettable parts of the game, but I never really connected with this particular fight. As a big fan of rhythm games, I usually never have a problem with titles that incorporate timing-based challenges into gameplay, but Miss Ruby's fight has always felt strange and inconsistent to me. Considering it's a punishing battle that resets you back to the start with each death, these inconsistencies can be very annoying in later stages of the fight, because you're forced to rewatch the in-between cutscenes with each attempt. Also, I never really understood why Sly would just agree to play this drawn-out game of Simon Says with an enemy, or why he would trust Miss Ruby's assistant to not betray him on his way over to her. Additionally, it's weird that Miss Ruby is so easy to defeat when up close and personal, as I figured an alligator would have been easy to design interesting physical combat for. Now, this is not to say that the entire episode is ruined due to a few below average jobs, but more to lament on what could have been had Vicious Voodoo stuck to the formula that made Tide of Terror and Sunset Snake Eyes so great. We could have gotten to see more of Sly's wonderful platforming and combat, including the excellent rail slide ability introduced in this episode. It's why levels like Descent into Danger and the Lair of the Beast stand out so vividly, because they combine Sly's terrific formula with an equally terrific theme and setting. These high highs are why Vicious Voodoo ranks above the arguably more consistent Fire in the Sky, because moments like escaping the beast with an epic rail slide can't be replicated elsewhere in Sly 1. For those who enjoy Sly for all its non-gameplay elements, Episode 3 delivers quality just as well as any other episode, but for those looking for an equally engaging set of platforming jobs, Vicious Voodoo may leave a little to be desired. The Cold Heart of Hate is the climactic finale of Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus that sees Sly finally battle his family's longtime rival and leader of the Fiendish Five, Clockwork. It's as grand and heroic a battle as you will find on the PS2 as you fight this cybernetically enhanced bird of prey deep in the heart of a Russian volcano. You'll duel him first in the sky using a jetpack equipped with a rocket launcher before engaging in the most intense and dangerous platforming challenge Sly 1 has to offer. This ends with a cathartic thrashing of the Cooper clan's most hated enemy and cements Sly as a master thief like his ancestors before him. Aside from the terrific final fight with Clockwork, The Cold Heart of Hate is also notable for how it breaks the established episode formula seen throughout the game. Rather than an explorative intro stage that leads into a large hub area, Sly's final episode is full steam ahead from beginning to end as levels play out in a streamlined fashion. It's a refreshing change of pace that helps add to the sense of urgency found in these intense infiltration missions. Additionally, it takes a temporary truce with Inspector Fox and the entire Cooper gang working in unison to tackle Clockwork's base of operations, which appropriately raises the stakes for the final Fiendish 5 member. Playing as Murray, Bentley, and Carmelita also drives home the gravity of the situation at hand, as Sly is not able to do this job alone, which elevates Clockwork well above the other bosses in the game. While Sly Cooper's 5th episode has to be praised for all its palpable tension, part of that credit should go to the increase in difficulty that makes some of these levels so stressful. As mentioned before, the second phase of Sly's showdown with Clockwork features among the most volatile platforming in the game, but still it doesn't compare to many of the Cold Heart of Hate's other levels. A Hazardous Path is an unforgiving on-the-rails shooting mission that forces you back to the beginning for any mistake, requiring a bit of trial and error to successfully complete in one go. Likewise, a Temporary Truce is easy enough when you know where all the fire slugs will emerge from, but can be frustrating at first when they take you by surprise. And Bentley Comes Through is a stick shooter like we've seen in other missions, but much more punishing than previous variations due to how quickly you can be destroyed. I really appreciate this small difficulty spike, as Sly 1 is already one of the easiest platforming games I can think of, and had the game not increased the challenge for this final area, it would have certainly been a letdown. All that said, I still don't think any of these challenges will stump anyone for too long, but the noticeable increase in challenge over previous levels reinforces the seriousness of this showdown with Clockwork. It's especially important because it helps to compensate for the lack of unlockables and choices in the Cold Heart of Hate compared to other episodes. Moreover, it adds to the hopeless atmosphere that makes this final episode so memorable. Without it, things would have felt anticlimactic, although the grand scale and setting would have still kept it somewhat memorable. That's because Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus excels at storytelling above all else. Till the very end, Sly 1 sprinkles in charming dialogue and tasteful cutscenes that don't overstay their welcome to tell a classic tale of good versus evil. It's remarkable how in just a few short hours these brief interactions can endear you to a cast of characters, so much so that it really doesn't matter what gameplay you're treated to, as long as you get to see Sly and his pals win in the end. This is what Episode 5 banks on, because truthfully, without an investment in the Cooper gang by this point, I could see the Cold Heart of Hate being a disappointment to some. But whether it's the realization of Clockwork's long history with the Cooper clan, the development of Sly and Carmelita's provocative and tumultuous relationship, or the wholesome vibes of the Cooper gang's bond, it's hard to imagine not rooting for Clockwork's downfall. All things considered, Sly 1's final episode is a fitting end to a terrific first game, and only ranks third because of the quality found earlier in the game. Few games manage to establish their tone as quickly as Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus does with the 1-2 punch that is its prologue and first episode. Immediately moving from the cartoonish moonlit rooftops of Paris to the rainy and sinister islands of the Welsh Triangle allows players to see the blend of lighthearted humor and dark themes that will permeate throughout the rest of the Sly franchise. This allows Sly 1 to tackle surprisingly serious topics for a game featuring cute anthropomorphic characters animated in comic book-like cel-shaded graphics. After all, this is not just a fun story about a thieving raccoon stealing back his family's most treasured possession, it's also a story of a boy growing up to get revenge on the group of thugs that forced him into an orphanage by murdering his parents in front of him. For this reason, it's only appropriate that Tide of Terror has the bleakest, most dreary atmosphere in Sly 1. The industrial nature of many of its levels' designs only reinforce this theme, and together with the hub's constant downpour help to create a feeling of constant tension throughout the episode. It perfectly paints that Sly's journey to recover the Thievius Raccoonus is not going to be as easy as breaking into the police headquarters was, illustrated by the intense security blocking Sly and the gang from even getting close to Raleigh's hideout in the first place. Add in the countless laser traps and guards trying to bring Sly's journey to a premature end in each level, and Episode 1 feels the most intentional in its design when it comes to stopping Sly in his tracks. As a result, and in conjunction with its status as the first world in Sly 1, Tide of Terror's levels are among the most iconic in the entire Sly franchise. High Class Heist in particular has always stood out as a brilliantly designed level that wonderfully showcases both Sly's platforming and stealth elements. Into the Machine is another standout Tide of Terror job that does a great job of showing off Sly's cinematic side with some neat camera angles and impressive set pieces. Similarly, a cunning disguise is extremely memorable due to the introduction of wooden barrels which allow Sly to sneak over booby traps safely, adding another dimension to the stealth gameplay. And even the gunboat graveyard is noteworthy for the first time we see the charming addition of a PA announcement from a Fiendish 5 member to their guards. In fact, the only job that doesn't feel legendary is the stick shooter mission called Treasure in the Depths, where Sly must fend off crabs underwater in order to secure one of Raleigh's treasure keys. It's a long, frustrating, and forgettable mission that doesn't add anything of value to the game in terms of stealth or platforming. What's worse is it takes away from the novelty of later missions of a similar type while forcing you to start the mission from the beginning for even one mistake, which will happen often if you're not familiar with the controls. Undoubtedly, it's the low point in Tide of Terror, and while I appreciate the attempt at adding variety to the first world, it felt unnecessary to drift away from the stealthy platforming that made Episode 1's first half so engaging. Unfortunately for Tide of Terror, what also keeps it from reaching Sly 1's peak is its disappointing boss fight. Sir Raleigh the Frog is not only the least intimidating of all the Fiendish 5 members, he is also by far the easiest to beat. Most of his attacks are easier to dodge than certain guards' regular attacks, resulting in an underwhelming and disappointing battle. This is the biggest missed opportunity for Tide of Terror, as Sir Raleigh the Frog is easily the least sympathetic member of the Fiendish 5, which should have made his thrashing all the more cathartic. Instead, this criminal who joined the Fiendish 5 and murdered Sly's parents out of nothing more than boredom is eliminated swiftly, leaving a lot to be desired. Still, Tide of Terror is largely a smashing success that memorably kicks off Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. It deserves to be praised for all that it seamlessly introduces into the Sly franchise and remembered for its importance to the series. And had Sunset Snake Eyes had just one or two more issues, Tide of Terror could have certainly been a worthy pick for Sly 1's best episode. Sly Cooper's suave and smooth personality has always given me George Clooney from Ocean's 11 vibes, which is why the pop-up mafia town called Mesa City feels the most appropriate for the thieving raccoon. Earlier I mentioned the blend of lighthearted humor and dark themes that define the Sly franchise, and no setting reflects that better than the casino. Their happy-go-lucky face and dark seedy underbelly encapsulate this dichotomy perfectly while providing an environment in which Sly's strengths can be seen on full display. Truthfully, casinos have always been a perfect setting for heists, and Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus is no exception. Whether it's climbing thin neon tubing to ascend to the top of a casino rooftop, leaping from one light fixture to the next to avoid being detected by guards, or bouncing off awnings outside to access otherwise inaccessible walkways, Sunset Snake Eyes provides plenty of moments that make you feel like a true master thief. As a result, unlike other gaming mascots who are closely associated with their first levels, like Sonic and Green Hill Zone or Banjo-Kazooie and Spiral Mountain, it's Sly Cooper's second episode that I find him more synonymous with. While Tide of Terror is certainly iconic in its own right, many of Mugshot's jobs are what come to mind first when thinking of Sly 1. Two to Tango is particularly memorable as the first mission that expands on the gameplay in the prologue, in which Inspector Carmelita Fox chases Sly throughout the episode. We see a similar level in episode 4, and a similar concept throughout Sly 2, but it never had as much impact as this first time here. Similarly, we see new mission types in the jobs Murray's Big Gamble and At the Dog Track that are copied later on but remain most effective in episode 2. A big reason for this is the attention to detail and charm that Sunset Snake Eyes exudes throughout the entire episode. Not only is it hilarious that Murray somehow got himself caught up in a race with gangster dogs when he was just trying to get a snack from a hot dog stand, it's also endearing to see him out in the field putting his body on the line for treasure keys. Additionally, small details like Murray's goofy celebration cutscene bring his personality to life and reinforce how he's different from Sly. Likewise, the little things throughout Sunset Snake Eyes, like the guards adhering to a specific theme, are what bring value to the episode. I always found it odd, for example, that Sir Raleigh the Frog's henchmen were all walruses that used seemingly random attacks. One threw a shuriken and wore a black leather jacket, another dressed like a hillbilly and tried to flop on you, while another attempted to smash you with a mallet, all of which doesn't really mesh with Raleigh's setting and industrial theme. Contrast this with the dogs using machine guns, playing cards, clubs, and ball and chains, which all fit the underground criminal theme episode 2 is based around. Now, I get that this is a cartoon-like video game and things don't necessarily need to make sense, but that doesn't stop it from being better when it does. It's part of why reaching Mugshot is so satisfying, because it feels good to reach the big boss dog after dealing with so many smaller henchmen along the way. It's a very easy to see but still gratifying sense of progression, appropriately punctuated by the most difficult fight in the episode. That being said, if Mugshot wasn't already my favorite Fiendish 5 member for his charisma and backstory, his fight certainly solidifies him as the most interesting member of the Dastardly Gang. Sure, the fight against Clockwork is a more epic conclusion, but Mugshot's battle is the more active and fun challenge and interestingly solves the issue of overcoming his brute strength. Sunset Snake Eyes isn't flawless, but it does a tremendous job of showing off why Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus is so great. While I'm happy that future titles in the series shifted their gameplay to a more open layout, it's hard to deny Sly 1's formula doesn't also work when examining episodes like this. As opposed to other episodes in the game, which all have at least one job I could do without, Sunset Snake Eyes is one where every single level, even the non-platforming ones, are enjoyable and add positively to the game's reputation. Perhaps it is just my affection for casinos or my love of gambling that makes this episode easy to connect with, but I truly believe this is as close to the peak of Sly Cooper as we'll ever get. After all, the high-risk, high-reward lifestyle of a gambler isn't too dissimilar to that of a thief, so perhaps it's only fitting that an episode all about avoiding dangerous pitfalls to achieve glory would be number 1. From its atmospheric music, to its unique characters, to its brilliant art direction, Sly 1 still holds up today. Despite being so different from its more acclaimed sequels, Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus is a truly worthwhile experience with fantastic episodes from start to finish. It manages to establish its identity and world in such a short amount of time that I'm still blown away by how much I enjoy and root for Sly and the gang. It remains one of the best platforming games on the PS2, and though it may not go down as one of the greatest games of all time, it still deserves praise for kickstarting such a wonderful franchise that fans still adore so many years later.